My name is Leah Parker, and I was 33 years old the night my mother-in-law tried to charge me rent for a home I had already paid for. It was the 93rd day of my marriage. We had just finished dinner at her house across town when Diane pulled a small piece of paper from her cardigan pocket and slid it toward me like she was handing over a bill. $1,000 a month. I saw the number before I felt the insult. But the rent was not the real betrayal. The real betrayal was the loan I did not know existed. Welcome back to the Hidden Family Revenge Stories, where quiet women get pushed too far, and the truth always leaves a paper trail. If anyone has ever tried to tell you that what you built somehow belongs to them, stay with me. This story is for you. Because the numbers in this one do not whisper. They hit hard. I should tell you what I do, because it explains everything that came after. I am a risk analyst for a regional insurance company downtown. My job is simple in theory and ugly in real life. I look for the one thing that does not fit. One number that does not match. One claim that sounds right until you check the line nobody thinks to question. People lie in patterns. After 11 years, I can usually feel the shape of a lie before I can prove it. I trust two things in this world more than most people. Compound interest. And a receipt. That is not me being cold. That is how a woman who paid her own way through school learned to sleep at night. For years before I got married, I bought my apartment alone. I put down $72,000 that I had saved one slow deposit at a time. I remember that wire confirmation more clearly than I remember my own vows. That should tell you something. When something rattles me, I do not pace. I do not call a friend. I open a spreadsheet. I line numbers up in one clean column until the truth stands still long enough for me to read it. That is how I calm down. My mother used to say I was born 40 years old. She was joking, but not really. So when I tell you I missed what was happening inside my own marriage, understand this. I did not miss it because I was foolish. I missed it because I made one exception. I told myself love did not need an audit. That was the only mistake in this story that was truly mine. My husband, Colin Parker, was easy in all the ways I was not. He sold medical equipment to clinics. He talked to strangers like they were old friends. He never once checked a bank balance in front of me. We met at a coworker's barbecue. 14 months later, we got married at the courthouse with 11 guests. I liked that he laughed at my dry little money jokes. I liked that he seemed relaxed. I liked that he did not look at me like a woman with an apartment and savings. He looked at me like a woman he loved. Or at least that is what I thought. After the wedding, he moved into my apartment because it made sense. I owned it. My mortgage was small. His lease was month to month. We lived in my two-bedroom place on Mercer Street. His mother, Diane, lived all the way across town in the old house on Ashby Lane, the one she had kept for 40 years. We were not living with her. Back then, that distance felt like mercy. Colin liked to joke that he was terrible with money. Diane handled his taxes, his insurance, even his car payment. He said it like it was charming instead of strange. I noticed it. Of course I noticed it. I notice everything. But a man who lets his mother handle paperwork did not strike me as a man who would put a second name on my front door. The first real sign came 3 weeks into the marriage. I came home from work, and the lights were already on. I had not given anyone a key. But Diane was standing in my kitchen, rearranging my cabinets like she lived there. Her brass key ring sat on the counter beside her purse, giving a little jingle every time she moved. She turned, smiled at me, and said, "There you are," like I was the guest. Diane had a way of taking over a room without lifting her voice. By the end of the first month, she had a whole routine. She came every Tuesday. She let herself in with the key Colin had made for her without asking me. She tidied. She moved my good knives into a drawer she liked better. She replaced my dish soap with the kind she used. And she left behind the smell of her lavender hand cream on every single thing she touched. That smell got everywhere. The counter. The mail. The handle of my refrigerator. Sometimes I could tell she had been in my apartment before I even turned the corner into the kitchen. I would just breathe in and know. Then she started calling my things the family's things. My grandmother's chair became that chair we have. My dishes became our set. It was small. It was constant. And it was exactly the kind of thing that sounds silly when you say it out loud, which is why it works so well. I did not fight her over the knives. I want to be honest about that. I know how it sounds. But I was not backing down because I feared her. I was watching her. A good analyst does not panic at the first odd number. She logs it. Then she waits for the second. So I logged the key. The cream. The way she kept saying ours when she meant mine. And then one Tuesday, while running her thumb along the edge of my kitchen counter, she asked, in that light voice of hers, "Now whose name is the apartment in exactly?" I told her the truth. Mine. She smiled. Then she said, "We'll see." I did not know yet that she already had her answer. The paperwork came on a Sunday. Day 21 of the marriage. Colin spread a thick folder across the kitchen table with the calm ease of a man who had practiced the moment. Then he slid a pen toward me. "Estate planning," he said, like he was saying paper towels or milk. He told me his mother's attorney had suggested it. He said we should add me to the deed so if anything happened to him, I would be protected. He said protected twice. I have replayed that Sunday 1,000 times, so hear me clearly. I did not sign blind. I asked why a man with no property needed to add me to my own deed for my protection. I asked why his mother's lawyer was drafting papers about my apartment. He had answers. Smooth ones. His hand was warm on my arm. We were 3 weeks married. The room was quiet. The life I thought I was in still felt real. But I was still me. Before I signed anything, I pulled out the wire confirmation for my $72,000 down payment and put it in a folder of my own, inside my own filing cabinet. I lined up the figures the way I always do. I looked at them until I felt steady again. Then I told myself something I would regret for a long time. If it is in writing and I keep my copy, I am safe. That was the most expensive sentence I ever believed. Because what I signed that Sunday was a quitclaim deed that added Colin as a joint owner of my apartment. And what I did not understand, because no honest version of estate planning would ever work like this, was that adding his name did not protect me. It gave him access to something more dangerous than my front door. It gave him access to the equity. And he was already standing at that door with Diane right behind him. So now you understand the dinner table. Day 93. Sunday dinner at Diane's house on Ashby Lane. The 4 of us. Colin. His sister, Brooke. Diane. And me. The pot roast was good. The conversation was plain and harmless until Diane set down her fork, reached into her pocket, and pulled out that slip of paper. She unfolded it slowly, like she did everything, and pressed it flat between us. In neat blue writing was one number. $1,000. She let me read it. Then she folded her hands and gave me that patient little smile. The one she used when she wanted to seem kind while being cruel. "Now that you're family," she said, "it's time to make things fair. Your apartment is family property. You'll pay rent like the rest of us. $1,000 a month." The lavender smell came off the paper when she pushed it closer. I noticed that. I notice everything. I did not raise my voice. I have never won anything by getting louder. I looked at the number. Then I looked at her. And I felt that old cold clarity settle over me. The kind that comes right before a file breaks open. I smiled. Not warmly. But honestly. Because for the first time in weeks, something in me had stopped pretending. "Then I'll just go back to my apartment," I said. It should have been a simple sentence. A fact. I bought it. I paid for it. My name was on it. I said it the way I would say the sky is blue. But the silence that followed was the wrong kind of silence. Brooke stopped chewing. Diane's smile held still. And Colin looked at me like I had started speaking another language. "What apartment?" he said with a small laugh. That laugh did more damage than the rent slip ever could have. A person does not laugh like that at a lie. He laughed like that at a fact so settled in his own mind, he truly could not see my confusion. To him, there was no apartment that was mine. There was the family's home. I just happened to live there. I felt the floor tilt, though my face never changed. Brooke leaned in then, soft and warm, the way people sound right before they push you off a cliff. "We're family now, Leah," she said. "Family shares. You can't be selfish about a roof." Diane nodded, pleased, like a lesson had finally landed. I looked at all three of them, at how easily they fit together in that moment, and I understood something all at once. This dinner was not a negotiation. It was an announcement. They were not asking me for rent. They were telling me a decision had already been made. I said nothing else that night. I helped clear the plates. I thanked Diane for dinner. I drove the 4 miles back to Mercer Street. To my apartment. Then I sat at my kitchen table in the dark for a long time. Finally, I turned on the lamp, opened my laptop, and started a new file. At the top, I typed one line. "What does Colin think he owns?" That was the first crack. Behind it was the whole wall. I did not confront Colin. Sit with that for a second, because the urge to confront is the urge that loses. The moment people know you are counting, they stop leaving things where you can count them. So I went quiet. For 1 week, I lived exactly the same way I always had. Coffee at 6. Work downtown. Home by 6:30. But now I watched. The first place I looked was our joint checking account, the one we had opened for household expenses. On paper, it looked simple. His paycheck in. Mortgage out. Groceries. Utilities. Normal. But I had spent 11 years finding the one number that did not belong. And there it was the second I stopped trusting the file. A recurring transfer. $1,100. Every month. Same day. Sent to an account marked only by a string of numbers. Not a vendor I knew. Not a bill I recognized. Just money leaving quietly. I pulled 3 months of statements and lined them up in one right justified column the way I always do. 3 perfect rows. $3,300 gone. And the tidy shape of it scared me more than a messy one would have. Messy is panic. Tidy is a plan. Someone had set this up carefully, like a faucet left running in a house where no one was supposed to listen for water. I gave Colin one chance to tell me the truth. Over breakfast, I mentioned lightly that I had been cleaning up the account and saw a recurring transfer. Did he know what it was? He did not even look up from his phone. "Probably bank fees," he said. Then, after a beat, "Or that old thing I set up forever ago." "I'll check." He was not going to check. I knew that. But forever ago caught in my head, because those transfers had started after the wedding, not forever ago. While he showered, the memory finally rose up. That Sunday. The thick folder. The one that was too thick to just be a deed. He had flipped pages fast. He had talked the whole time. Rate lock. Routine refinance paperwork. Nothing you need to read. Sign here. And here. One more. His hand had stayed warm on my arm the whole time, so I would keep moving and never slow down. I stood there in my kitchen and felt sick, truly sick, not at him yet, but at myself. Then the sickness passed. And the analyst came back. That Tuesday, Diane made the next mistake for all of them. I came home early, and her car was in my spot. Inside, she was moving from room to room with a notepad, writing things down. Actually taking inventory. The good chair. The dining set. The family things. On the entry table sat her brass key ring and my mail, spread out wide enough that I knew she had touched every envelope. When I asked what she was doing, she smiled and said, "Just making sure we know what's here. For insurance." I almost laughed. I do insurance. There is no policy on earth that needed my mother-in-law cataloging my living room while I was at work. She was not protecting my things. She was claiming them. And if you are hearing this and someone has a key to your home and talks about your name like it is just a suggestion, listen to me. That is not closeness. That is a stake being driven quietly into your life. Find the deed. Find the account numbers. Put them somewhere only you can reach. I mean that. That night, I changed nothing and said nothing. But I started building the file for real. Diane had given me the next thread without even knowing it. Insurance inventory. Somebody in that family cared very much what my apartment was worth. The next morning at work, I did what I should have done before I ever said I do. I ran the property like any asset on my desk. First, my own records. The wire confirmation for the $72,000. Clean. Traceable. Mine. That paper was gold, and I knew it. Then I pulled what I could on the apartment itself. A home feels private, but it isn't. A deed is public. A lien is public. A loan tied to property leaves a record. I requested the documents for my address and paid the fee. Then I waited 2 days that felt like 2 years. While I waited, another strange detail surfaced in our account history. A loan servicer. Not my lender. Not the company holding my first mortgage. A second company. The kind that handles home equity lines and second loans. I did not jump to conclusions. I logged it. But I could already feel the shape of it tightening. The transfers. The thick folder. The fake rate lock. Diane's inventory. A second servicer tied to a home I had bought alone. I did not have the document in my hand yet, but deep down, I knew. And I knew it was going to be worse than rent. The family got to me before the records did. It started with a text from one of Colin's cousins I had met once at the courthouse. "Hope you're settling in okay. Just remember, family takes care of family." An hour later, an aunt I had never met left a comment on one of my old photos about learning to share. By evening, I understood. Brooke had been busy. She had gotten to the family first. She was making me the villain before I could become the threat. The story she was telling was simple. Leah is cold. Leah is calculating. Leah cares more about money than people. It would have been almost funny if it had not been so deliberate. Later, I learned why she worked so hard. Brooke owed the family money. Real money. Money she did not want me, the woman who reads ledgers for a living, ever looking into. So she made me the danger before I had the chance to become one. I did not defend myself. I did not explain. I had spent enough of my life learning that once people decide what you are, explanations only make them more comfortable. So I went quiet, and I went back to the county records site. This time, the documents were ready. But before I could open them, a different envelope nearly blew the whole thing open. It came in the mail on a Thursday. Thick. Official. The return name was that second servicer. The one I had flagged but never chosen. I held it for maybe 10 seconds. Then Colin moved faster than I had ever seen him move in our marriage. He took it from my hand and said, "Too breezy. Oh, that's just refinance junk. I keep meaning to cancel those." Then it was in his back pocket before I could blink. I let him take it. On purpose. Because a person who snatches an envelope that fast is telling you everything you need to know. Colin had never moved like that for his own mother's calls. He had never moved like that to help with groceries. But for a statement from a loan company I was not supposed to know existed? He moved like the building was on fire. That night, he was extra kind. He cooked. He rubbed my shoulders. He asked about my day and did not once mention the mail. Kindness like that is a receipt too, if you know how to read it. It told me the envelope held something he could not let me see. So the next morning, I stopped waiting for the mail to betray him. I went to the source. I pulled the recorded property documents. The truth still reached me sideways. And Diane, of all people, delivered it. On one of her Tuesday visits, she was sorting my mail into little piles when I came home early. She hurried out so fast that she left one envelope behind on the entry table, half hidden under a magazine. Same servicer. Same thick paper. Addressed to both names. Colin Parker and Leah Parker. At my address. I waited until she was gone. Until the lavender smell faded. Then I sat at my own kitchen table and opened the thing they had kept from me for 3 months. It was a statement for a home equity line of credit. A loan secured by my apartment on Mercer Street. Opened in both our names. There was a credit limit. There was a balance. And then there was the part that made the whole room seem to go quiet around me. A draw history. Line by line, it showed every dollar that had been pulled from the equity in my apartment since shortly after the wedding. I read it the way I read everything. One straight column. Date. Amount. Date. Amount. Date. Amount. Somebody had been bleeding value out of my home for months, and my name was sitting on the loan like I had agreed to it. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I just sat very still and looked at a debt I had never knowingly taken against a home I had paid for myself. And I understood then that the rent had never been the point. The rent was the distraction. This was the theft. There is a version of me that walked straight into the bedroom that night and threw the statement at Colin's face. I felt her. I wanted that. But I did not let her out. And that restraint is the only reason I get to tell you this as a win instead of a warning. The minute you confront people like this, they stop leaving evidence. So I did the hardest thing I have ever done. I got into bed beside the man who had mortgaged my home behind my back, and I said, "Good night," like everything was normal. The next morning, I was calm. Calmer than I had any right to be. I had one real document now, but one document is not a case. A statement tells you a loan exists. It does not tell you how it was built. I needed the full deed history. I needed to trace every draw. I needed to know exactly where every dollar had landed. So I made a plan. Quiet. Complete. I would build the whole picture before anyone knew I was looking. Then I would decide what came next. The county records told the story I had refused to read on that Sunday. 2 documents. 2 dates. 2 knives. The first, recorded 21 days after the wedding, quitclaim deed, adding Colin as joint owner. My signature on it. The second, recorded 19 days later, deed of trust securing a home equity line of credit on the property. My signature on that too. Then it all came back. The thick folder. The fake estate planning. The fake rate lock. Sign here. Sign here. Sign here. He had not stolen my home in one move. Men like Colin, coached by women like Diane, are too careful for one move. He did it in 2. First, he turned my one name into 2 names. Then he used the 2 names to borrow against equity that had always been mine. I sat there staring at the screen and felt something I did not expect. Not despair. Focus. Because something done with documents can be undone with documents. And documents were the one weapon in that family that only I really knew how to use. Then I traced the money. And that is where I am most dangerous. I had the draw history. I had the joint account. I had Colin's habit of leaving his banking app open on the kitchen counter because a man who lets his mother do his taxes never thinks to log out around his wife. I followed every draw from that line of credit to where it landed. And the picture was uglier than even I had imagined. A large part of the money had gone straight to a mortgage servicer. Not mine. Diane's. The rest had gone to 2 credit cards in Colin's name only. Debt he had hidden from me. So now I had the whole structure. My husband married a woman who owned her home. He added himself to her deed under the cover of love. He borrowed against her equity using a signature he got through deception. Then he used her money to keep his mother's house alive and wipe out his own secret debt. The $1,000 rent demand had never been about $1,000. It was Diane testing whether I would hand over more without a fight. I closed the laptop and sat there in the quiet. I had the shape of it now. The only question left was the one that surprised me. Why was Diane so desperate? I got that answer the following Tuesday. She had left her tote bag on my counter while she ran outside to her car. I did not go digging through her things. I did not need to. A letter was open at the top, sitting right there in the side pocket. I looked down. Notice of default. Her house on Ashby Lane, the one she had lived in for 40 years, the one her late husband had brought her into, was behind on payments. A bad refinance years earlier had buried her. She was going to lose it. And for maybe 1 hour, I felt for her. I really did. She was not some cartoon villain stroking a cat in the dark. She was a frightened widow looking at the loss of the only home she had ever known. Somewhere in her mind, my apartment, my equity, my savings had become a lifeboat the family was entitled to climb into. I understood her fear. Then I remembered the draw history. The smile at the rent table. The cousins turned against me. And the soft feeling vanished. Sympathy is not surrender. You can understand why someone is desperate and still refuse to drown so they can float. I took everything to a lawyer. Her name was Nina Russo, and she had spent 20 years untangling family messes exactly like this one. I sat across from her with my folder open between us. The wire confirmation. The recorded deeds. The loan statement. The draw history. The trace. I watched her face change as she turned the pages. She did not promise miracles. I respected that. But she told me what mattered. The $72,000 down payment was traceable to premarital funds. Strong. The quitclaim deed could be challenged. Stronger still, the home equity line required informed consent. If my signature had been obtained through lies, hidden inside paperwork I was told was routine refinance material, that was serious. Then she looked at me and said, "You are not asking a judge to feel sorry for you. You are handing a judge arithmetic. Judges love arithmetic." I almost smiled. She asked me one question. "Do you want to fight, or do you want to win?" I wanted to win. So for the next 2 weeks, I did the quiet, boring work that actually wins. People imagine revenge as one dramatic explosion. It is not. It is a folder built slowly after midnight while a husband sleeps in the next room. I gathered every page. Made copies. Then copies of the copies. I stored them where no Tuesday visit could ever touch them. The quitclaim. The deed of trust. The loan statement with the draw history. The transfers into Diane's mortgage and Colin's hidden cards. And at the center, the anchor I had saved on the very Sunday I signed away my certainty. The wire confirmation for $72,000. I lined it all up in one straight column until the whole betrayal stood there clean and visible. Every lie matched a date. Every claim met proof. I put it all in a plain folder, the kind I carry to work, and set it on the top shelf of my closet behind things only I touched. Then I called Nina and told her I was ready to file. She asked if I was sure, because once the petition was filed, there would be no more quiet. There hasn't been quiet for a while, I told her. They just thought there was. The pressure started before Sunday. Colin could feel the temperature change in the apartment even if he did not know why. He started asking little testing questions. Was I okay? Was work hard? Had I talked to anyone? A man with nothing to hide does not suddenly care about who his wife is talking to. I gave him nothing. I'm fine, I said. Just busy. Meanwhile, Diane moved to collect. She called Sunday evening, all warm authority, and reminded me the first month's rent was due. She even offered the account number for the transfer. The exact same account number I had already traced. She handed me one more piece of evidence and did not know it. Of course, I said sweetly. Let's all sit down and make it official. You, me, Colin, Brooke. I'd like to do this properly. She loved that idea. She thought she was setting a stage for my surrender. She had no idea what room she had just built for me. After I hung up, I texted Nina one line. It's set for Sunday. Then I balanced the column one last time and slept better than I had in weeks. On Friday, sitting in Nina's office, I did the one thing left to do. I filed for divorce. I did not do it in rage. I did it the way you close an account that has been quietly draining you dry. With grief. With relief. The petition named the apartment as my separate property. It flagged the quitclaim deed. It flagged the home equity line. It asked that Colin be responsible for the debt used on his mother's mortgage and his hidden credit cards. Nina also recorded a notice on the property so nobody could draw another dollar or try to move anything while the case was active. The faucet was shut. And finally, I understood what had haunted me since the dinner table. Why Colin had laughed and said, "What apartment?" It was not just cruelty. It was belief. In his head, and in Diane's head, there had never been an apartment that belonged to me. There was family property I had been allowed to live in. And now, in their minds, I owed rent for the privilege. They had rewritten ownership in their heads long before they rewrote it on paper. Sunday came cold and clear. I drove the 4 miles to Ashby Lane with my plain folder on the passenger seat. They were all there, waiting like a tribunal. Diane at the head of the table. Colin on her right. Brooke beside him. And to my surprise, Diane's older brother Victor, rough-faced and quiet, brought in as an extra witness to my expected obedience. There was coffee. A plate of cookies nobody touched. And on the entry table, as always, sat the brass key ring with my key on its little dish like it lived there. Diane had me sit. She folded her hands and opened in that warm, public voice she used when she wanted to look generous. "We're so glad you're being mature about this, Leah," she said. "Family helps family. First month's rent today, then we'll set up the automatic transfer and everyone can stop worrying." Brooke nodded eagerly. Colin would not quite meet my eyes. I set my folder on the table and let it sit there closed for one long second. Then I said, "Before I pay anyone anything, I think we should all be looking at the same numbers." I opened the folder and laid the pages out one by one, squared to the edge of the table. This is the deed to my apartment when I bought it 4 years ago alone. This is the wire confirmation for the $72,000 down payment from my personal account before I ever met Colin. This is the quitclaim deed signed 3 weeks into our marriage, adding Colin as an owner. I was told it was estate planning. I slid the next page into the center. And this is the home equity line of credit opened 19 days later against my apartment. Then I laid down the last page. The draw history. "These are the withdrawals," I said. "And this column is where the money went. Most of it to a mortgage servicer. Yours, Diane. The rest to 2 credit cards in Colin's name." The room went silent. Wrong kind of silent. Diane's mouth opened, but I did not let her step in yet. "So when you tell me my apartment is family property," I said, looking straight at her, "and that I should pay rent like the rest of you, then I'll just go back to my apartment." Colin made that same little broken laugh. "What apart?" I turned to him before he finished. "This one," I said. "The one with my name on the original deed. The one your mother's mortgage has been living off for 3 months. The one you borrowed against with my signature after lying to me about what I was signing. That apartment." And then the room broke apart. Diane shot up first. Her chair scraped hard against the floor. The warmth fell off her face like it had never been there. "After everything this family has done for you," she snapped. "That house is 40 years of my life. You have money. You could fix this. You sit there with your little folder." Colin jumped in over her, talking to me, to Victor, to the wall, to anyone. It was supposed to be temporary. I was going to pay it back. I just needed time. Mom said it would be fine. She said it would be okay until things settled. There it was. The whole thing. Spilling out of him. Brooke tried to save herself the way she had tried to bury me. "This is exactly what I told everyone," she said, voice sharp and thin. "She's cold. She probably planned this." I looked at her and said, without raising my voice, "I traced $15,000 to your salon, Brooke. Family money from the joint account. We can talk about your books too, if you want." She stopped like she had hit glass. Then she sat down. I never stood. I never shouted. I let each of them explode over the quiet column on the table while I stayed still. Because the strongest person in a room full of chaos is the one who still has control. And in the silence after Brooke folded, Victor set down his coffee mug and looked at his sister. "Diane," he said, rough and flat, "the girl paid for the place. That's the end of it." And just like that, the only witness who mattered had read the same column I had. I let his words settle. Then I gave them their options. "I've already filed for divorce," I said. "There is a notice recorded on the property, so nobody is drawing another dollar from my home. You have two choices. 1. Colin signs a quitclaim deed returning the apartment to my name alone and refinances the home equity line into his own name so I am released. We settle quietly. 2. We let a judge read this folder in public." I closed the folder. "You have until my lawyer's office opens Monday." Nobody argued after that. That is the thing about proof. Once the math is undeniable, the fight loses air. Colin signed within the week. Of course he did. Option 2 would have dragged every lie into daylight, and a man who hides debt behind an easy laugh does not want a judge reading it out loud. As I gathered my papers, I picked up the brass key ring from its little dish by the door and set it in front of Diane. "I'm changing the locks on Tuesday," I said. "You won't need this anymore." Then I drove the 4 miles back to my apartment. Mine. The locks were changed on Tuesday by a cheerful man who had no idea he was closing a chapter. The quitclaim deed was recorded by Friday. My name stood alone on the property again, the way it had for 4 years before any of this. Nina handled the divorce cleanly. There was not much anyone could contest with that paper trail. Colin took the home equity line. All of it. Refinancing it into his own name was part of the settlement. Until the lender released me, the notice on the property kept the debt frozen in place. A few months later, I refinanced the first mortgage into my name alone at a rate I negotiated myself, sitting across from a banker who treated me exactly the way I liked to be treated. Like a woman who knew her numbers. Diane kept her house in the end. Not because I saved it. Not because anyone forgave anyone. She sold the second car, took in a boarder, and clawed her way current the slow hard way. The way the rest of us do it. I do not know if she ever understood that the lifeboat she tried to climb into was another woman's home. I did not stay close enough to find out. Brooke stopped texting. The cousins went quiet. And the first thing I noticed the morning after the locks were changed was the air. No lavender. No powdery smell on my counters or my mail. Just coffee. Cedar from my closet. And quiet. I sat at my kitchen table, in my home, and opened my laptop out of habit. For the first time in months, I had nothing left to trace. Still, I balanced one last column, just to feel it close. Every number was mine. Keep the receipts for the life you built. Not because you expect to be robbed. But because the people who truly love you will never need proof. And the ones who don't will always demand it. That's my story. 3 months. 1 dinner. And a loan with my name on it that I never truly agreed to take. If this made you think about whose name is really on your deed, your home, your accounts, take that as your sign and check this week. Not someday. Share this with a woman who needs to hear it. And if you want more stories where patience beats panic and paper beats lies, stay with the Hidden Family Revenge Stories.